This is the planning board, Wednesday, January 25th, 2023. I think we'll start, Todd, with the roll call for attendance.
Very good. I'll begin roll call attendance. I'll begin with Pete.
Present.
James.
Here.
Bob.
Here.
Michael.
Here.
And Eric. Going once. Going twice. Very good. Eric is absent at present.
Okay. So after consulting with the town council, we're going to take the agenda out of order and hold the executive session first. We'll then resume the meeting in open session. Members of the public in attendance will not be admitted to the board's breakout room for the executive session, but may remain in the Zoom meeting until we return to open session. We don't expect that the executive session will take more than 30 minutes. So I apologize in advance for that little delay. The board will now consider entering executive session in accordance with open meeting law, MGL C 30A section 21A purpose 3, to discuss strategy with respect to potential litigation, Keys Farm LLC, because the chair finds that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigation position of the board or town. May I have a motion to that effect from one of the board members, please?
Motion that we go into executive session.
Seconded.
Could you have a roll call for the vote, please, Todd?
Yes, I'll begin with Michael.
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
James.
Aye.
And Pete.
Aye.
All right, very good. With that, I would like to let the public know that I will be creating a waiting room.
for us to hire an attorney to now go after all you guys and really make this a messy situation. That's the only way things happen in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Correct? Well, it's the truth. Last week, 2 weeks ago, you hung us up and then said, we're moving on. Tonight, you put out an agenda. You didn't follow the agenda. You went into executive session, and then you're coming back telling us we're not speaking. The volunteer positions, I can understand they're volunteered. But the people who represent us, starting with Todd, anyone who's an elected official in Bolton should just resign their position and say, I really can't effectively do my job. And you're using, Mr. Lawyer, I'm sorry, my tax dollars are paying you. It's a joke.
Yeah, so as we said, we apologize for not being able to say more right now. Over the past couple of years with this project, we have tried to do what we can to engage the developer, and there are certain limitations, time limitations that we're under in order for us to take action. So there has been some time that we've needed to wait until certain deadlines have passed, and we've gotten advice from town council on what we should do in what time, and it just haven't gotten to some of those things yet. But since our last meeting, this the new information of potential litigation has been brought to our attention, and we're once again just following what town council's recommendation is at this point. And like I said, wish we could do more right now. This just doesn't mean we're going away, right? We're going to continue to try to work on this with the avenues that are open to us.
So when does Bolton announce that they've been sued by Keys Farm? When does that become public news? Is that something you'd ever announce, or do you hide that? So I'm going to be checking every day to see when that lawsuit becomes active.
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that.
And then how long, by the way, after executive sessions, after all this crap blows over, are you allowed to publish the minutes from the executive session, Todd?
I'll defer to Council Falk for the publication of those minutes and the privacy concerns therein.
Sure. So executive session minutes remain confidential until the purpose for the executive session has expired. So typically when you're talking about litigation strategy, when the litigation matter has been settled or resolved, at that point, when the town doesn't have a strategic reason to keep the executive session minutes confidential, then they are available for release.
So can we confirm that those executive session minutes are actually being kept? Because I'm going to be honest, the prior town planner was atrocious with minutes. And I know from a ZBA perspective, we haven't published minutes in over a year. So I'm just kind of curious to know that that's actually an ongoing thing that will legitimately be kept, so that when it's time to publish them, we're actually getting true and accurate information. I know this
Yes, ma'am.
public meeting law makes things very difficult.
Yes, ma'am, I will be keeping accurate minutes therein. We were very disciplined in keeping our discussions on target without distraction, but I will make those available for when they're eligible for release.
And do those get published as a traditional minute? So i.e. I'll get an email once they're published?
That I'm not sure. I'll speak to town council, town clerk tomorrow.
Okay.
Hi, this is Shad Bauer, and I'm just curious as to, you guys will eventually get to the bottom of whatever you guys are dealing with, but someone who's been on the horn here for 1 hour and 15 minutes, what are the topics in which you guys are discussing, so we can at least just kind of get past that and go on to the next agenda items? But I am curious as to what the topics you were discussing. What is the potential charges that the town of Bolton is facing?
Yeah, like I said, we've been advised not to comment any further on the potential litigation other than what we said.
Were you of this belief before the agenda was published, which said the meeting would start at 7 o'clock and that, so why was an agenda published the way it was published and then come 7 o'clock, everything changed?
As I said at the beginning of the meeting, we took the advice of town council to enter the executive session first because, the board didn't know what, the outcome of that was going to be.
When did town council's advice come then to change that up?
That's 7:01.
I can let you know that advice from council came from later on this afternoon, well within the 48 hours required to post meetings per open meeting.
No agenda update was sent though. I mean, to be honest, we'd completely had changed like how this would be approached if the agenda was shifted differently. I just don't think it's fair. There's a lot of people trying to log into the meetings from the neighborhood that weren't able to log in, and we're just getting a meeting rejection because of how you strategically set this up. So once you went into an executive session, you can't log into the meeting. You're not in a waiting room. You're just getting kicked out of the meeting. It says it's locked by administrator. So just again, now this is second week in a row that town council has completely thrown off anything that said the agenda was going to be how it was. It's really inappropriate and in bad form. And moving forward, it would be helpful if you actually followed your agenda, or if you were making changes to the agenda, you knew ahead of time that you update the agenda and send it so people know what to expect.
Yeah, as Todd said, we're not allowed by law to change the agenda 48 hours before the meeting. We can't post a new agenda. We can start the meeting and change the agenda during the meeting. The other thing just to note is we've never been in a situation like this before. So I'm not trying to use that as an excuse. It's just we're trying to navigate a difficult situation with the advice of the town attorney, and that's, that's really all I can say. I mean,
I do believe the planning board was in litigation actually maybe last year or the year before. So I don't think this litigation thing is new for you guys, but I mean, different scenario and different context perhaps, but you have to understand that, again, we've received no information for 18 months. And now for you to be like, well, we're just putting the kibosh on it and you're not going to hear for us again for another 18, 24 months is just not acceptable. So.
Yeah, like I said, we understand everyone's frustration, and all we can do is try to, use the avenues that are available to us, listen to our town council, and try to move forward with what we are able to do.
The one thing you can answer though is, does litigation preclude the planning board from moving forward with any other movement in this neighborhood? Or you literally can't do anything and we're on an absolute hold until the litigation gets dealt with?
What I would say, Mr. Chair, is, the answer to that is no. And that's not what the board intends to do. It's just that I have advised the board that its actions and discussions on this topic take place in executive session to best preserve the town's litigation position. Doesn't mean that the town's not, and the board's not doing anything. It just means that I think the town is best served in terms of its litigation position to have those discussions at executive session, which the open meeting law allows us to do.
So any strategic moves that the town decides to take in this neighborhood, i.e. any bond reduction, anything like that, could potentially be happening in executive session and we would not know about it? negotiations with the developer to move this neighborhood forward would be happening in executive session, and we would not know about it. Can you
Oh.
confirm that?
No, we're not. Executive session is with the board and town council. There's no developer.
No, I understand, but I'm saying the board could be making decisions about things like bond reduction or figuring out strategically how to approach the developer to come up with a plan to meet end goals to get this road approved, yet that's happening in executive session. So nobody knows publicly that what's happening. You're sending letters, which are probably not public information because of the lawsuit. So there's no possible way for anybody in the public to know any negotiations about what you're doing potentially with the developer to move this neighborhood forward. That's all in quote executive session.
Yeah, so as I said before, will any updates that we're able to provide as soon as we can provide them, you know, at town council's advice, we will provide those, right? But once again, we kind of have, we're not lawyers, we have to, you know, go by the advice of town council, who is, you know, working to, you know, the goal is to resolve this, right?
Right, no, I understand that. I'm just saying the negotiations to resolve are never going to be a public. We're never going to know what's happening, what discussions you're having and how it gets resolved or have say in that resolve, right? Because it's happening in executive session. I guess that's my frustration. So it is what it is. Communication is key. You guys need to do a better job.
Yeah, like I said, we're very happy. Any information that we're able to share, when we're able to share it, we will certainly do that. You know, I would rather share more, right? It's just, you know, legal situation. Got to go with the advice that we're given.
Is town council solely representing the town of Bolton, or is town council representing the town of Bolton and us residents of Moderator Way, who, by the way, our tax dollars are paying town council?
I'll defer to Attorney Falk on that.
Yep, my client is the town of Bolton as a municipal entity. So I represent the town as a legal entity, which includes its boards and its officials.
So the benefits of the townspeople are not necessarily in your priority. You're protecting the town, not the people that live in the neighborhood.
Elected officials and its volunteer
Right.
officials.
Can you confirm that, please?
I that's not something I can confirm. My client is the town of Bolton, which is, you know, the municipal corporation, the town of Bolton.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, Dan Costa, 91 Moderator Way. So trying to follow this. So now we're going to get even less information because of a potential possible pending, maybe legal action coming from the opposite party. So let me ask you this. Is the town planning any action? Has the other party, Keys Farm, done anything yet that warrants the town taking legal action at this moment? Things aren't done, things aren't moving. Is there a violation in any type of agreement? What are we looking at next? You know, everyone's turning to town council, but what's the town council doing to go after the person that's doing this to the town? So that's my first question, and then I'll go from there.
You know, to reiterate, there really isn't much we're able to comment on right now. The planning board will continue to do everything that we can within the law under the advice of town council to move this situation to a resolution.
Okay, so let's try to work around what goes on behind closed doors in this little small 5,000 person town. So if we can't talk about what might be coming, we can't, from the opposite side, we can't talk about what our side is doing behind closed doors, which is made up of, if I'm not mistaken, of residents of this town. What is the next thing that's public knowledge that I would expect you folks to know? What is the next date, next timeline? What is the next hard thing that any legal beagle or somebody that knows what they're doing goes and looks and says, aha, this is the next thing that everybody knows. It's not information that's only that can't be spoken because of what could be, maybe, possibly, who knows, maybe not, or what goes on behind your little secret, little closed meetings that then you can't tell us anything more. So let me summarize. What is the next thing that everybody is public information, is the next date, deadline, milestone marker that will trigger the town taking a legal step? That shouldn't be anything secretive about that. I ask those that know. What's the next thing we're looking at before the town does something?
I'm
Am
not.
I on mute?
I'm not aware of anything off the top of my head. I don't know if we have that information right now to.
Excuse me. We've been working on all sorts of dates given to us about there's a time where a bond is open, if work isn't done, it's a 5-year clock. Once that 5-year comes, then the town gets the bond, and then there's things about going in front of the town council. So to sit here and say you don't know, I'm sorry, I'm gonna actually have to come back and say somebody on this board should know what's the next date. How about this? I've heard this line, let's turn this to town council. I mean, if the town council, somebody can't tell us what is in the legal documentation, what is in the legal paperwork, what is in the agreements, how can then we can be confident that you guys are actually following and sticking through? Please answer, what is the date? What is the clock? There is something. This cannot be going on for 5, 10, 15 years.
So, as I said, we really aren't able to comment any further on.
No, I'm sorry, Pete. I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry.
I don't know the answer.
These are things that are in dates. We've been told dates. We've been given timelines. This is not something that is a secretive thing. This is something that if I need to, or if me and the 17 other houses, 18 other houses on the street get involved, we could probably dig up enough stuff, some dates, communications, something. There's dates on the paperwork you guys are working off of. There's something. I don't believe you guys, this is all working on a blind, when it gets done, gets done. There's a clock ticking of sorts on different variations. We don't hold the bond forever. The bond has to be released at some point. What is the clock on that?
Here's what's odd is we went radio silent, heard nothing from the planning board for like a year. And then all of a sudden it becomes winter. Myriads of us have called you to ask about what's going on with plowing this year. And all of a sudden we magically get on the planning board agenda again. Great. And suddenly now the town is being threatened with a lawsuit from the builder. The builder, I know for a fact, Todd, you said you had not heard from him. I know Brian Falk last meeting said he had not heard from the builder or his town council in a while. So suddenly, all of a sudden, we're in this situation. Something's got to give. This doesn't make any sense. And I don't know if we have to go to somebody above Bolton in the town government, in the state government, to figure out what's going on in this town, but it's not right.
When I first began here, I was given instruction from the exit memo from Valerie Ortiz, my predecessor, allotting me that all communication between the town and the developer here was done through the office of town council. So that is very true. I hadn't heard anything from the developer here since I've started directly. It's always been through proxy. So
Brian Falk told us last meeting,
Yep.
in public meeting, that he had not heard in a while from that person. So, like I said, interesting, we haven't been on the agenda and suddenly we're on the agenda and now we're in this dispute that we weren't in even 2 weeks ago.
You know, and I'm also looking at an email from Erica back in June, and I realize it's now 6 months ago, but in it says, I reach out about once a month to the developer through town council, though the developer has not responded. Now, I understand this is 6 months ago, but if the developer is through council, why isn't anything get done? But hold on, I want to back up to what I was asking earlier. I want to hear from the folks on the board. I want to hear some dates. I want to hear timelines, because this can just keeps getting kicked. Todd, Brian, Bob, Pete. I mean, somebody has to look at some paperwork that you guys are looking at. I remember at the last meeting, Todd, you kept looking up, things would come up, you would pull up papers and you would have information and this and that. So I am asking, like, this is almost hysterical that nobody's nobody's giving us the dates that we know. You guys have to be aware of this stuff. I mean, otherwise, if there's no dates, if there's no timelines that are part of the agreements, I'm not talking about what you guys, this is not something that's a secretive strategic thing, whether you tell us or not. This should be in the paperwork and all those bazillion legal documents that are filled with the town and this and that. What is the next date that's hard set that we can at least look at and know and see what's going on?
So once again, the town council has advised us not to talk any further about it.
Wow.
On this.
I just wish that the residents of town could sit through something like this and just watch how this operates. The fact that you guys cannot give dates, these are things that are part of agreements that surely if we went looking, we could find ourselves, and yet you won't even just speak what you can look down and share with us. And that's just, last week we sat here and we listened to you guys speak about how this is a volunteer position, and you want a little understanding from the townsfolk. But my goodness, at a certain point you need to say that this isn't quite ethically. This is whether you're not doing the town's bidding, you're doing the states, you're doing the big government's bidding, and people are hurting, and you guys are our neighbors. And the fact that nobody's saying, hey, even though we're not making movement on this, there's obviously problems with how the state and how things work. What can we do so that there's not other families impacted by this? The guy at the Keys Farm did all this to this neighborhood. Things were going awry, creates a new LLC, does another development here in town. Everyone's like, oh, we can't do anything. It's a different LLC. It's the same guy, just same guy. And nobody says, whoa, this happens? I think I understand if you folks didn't realize this until you got on the board and you're seeing how things go on. But then when you see these things and you guys don't try to actually make a difference, it's apparent that the town council doesn't look out for the townspeople's interests. It's for the town, the entity of the town in relation to the state and to the federal government, whatever that works. But my goodness, you guys are our neighbors, and you're not even saying, hey, we've made it to the board. We're on the board. You're not beholden to a higher authority of a federal government or whatever. You're us. And you guys aren't even doing anything to try to make the town you live in. I assume you guys live in, I don't even want to know if anybody on this board doesn't live in Bolton. I'm going to assume, and let's leave it at that. My goodness, this is, in fact, you guys can't even give dates. That's it. I'm done. You guys are, good day. Good day,
So,
all of you.
I think we need to end this conversation now. As I said, we wish we could say more, and we're unable to at this point. When we have more information to provide, we'll provide it. I appreciate everyone who stayed on the meeting for this topic. And
Hi, I came in late. Can I interrupt for a second? I'm one of the residents on Moderator Way. I was just asking the town, I know you guys can answer this. I guess I'm a little confused. What exactly does my tax money go towards?
Yeah, listen, we can't continue this conversation. There's
I'm
nothing else
asking
to
a
say
question.
right
It's fair.
on this
It's
topic.
fair.
I think we just need to move on to some of the other items.
We would love to move on. This is getting ridiculous.
So, Todd, can you mute everyone in the meeting, please?
This is pretty cowardly.
So once again, this is a difficult situation that we haven't faced as the board before. And we're going to do everything we can. And it may take time to try to resolve it. And we have to listen to the advice of our town council and work through the avenues that are available to us. And those are sometimes somewhat limited, and they're particularly limited in how quickly they can reach a resolution. You know, with subdivisions, typically what the board does is work with the developer, the residents, other departments in the town. And unfortunately, with this subdivision, the developer, you know, hasn't been working with the board for a while, right? And that is kind of typically what the planning board does. And so when we don't have that availability, we have to try to, you know, figure out alternatives within what we're allowed to do legally. And those, unfortunately, are not things that happen quickly. And so we're just trying to figure out the best way to navigate this situation. And that's what we spoke about in the executive session prior to coming back tonight. And we'll continue doing that, you know, as necessary. And like I said, I'm sorry that we don't have more tonight. We will have more. It's just that's where we are right now. And we just need to move on to the next agenda item. All right, so the next thing on our list for tonight is continued backland lot special permit and common driveway permit, Christopher Slade of 62 South Bolton Road. Special permits for property identified on Assessor's Map C as parcels 18, 20, 20.1, and 27. Do we have the applicant or representative from the applicant on tonight, Todd? Or I know this has been continued for some time.
This has been continued. I don't see directly a representative from this applicant. I don't see any familiar names, for example. The only other way I would have to do is either have someone type in chat if they're here to represent the applicant, or I can clearly remove the mute function from the body of people here. So if you are the agent that's representing the second item here for the continued backland lot special permit and common driveway permit under the applicant of Christopher Slade, just indicate so in the chat, and we can go from there.
Okay, well, perhaps during our earlier executive session, and someone may have tried to join, or you know, they didn't want to wait on this topic. So I guess we could continue it given that, or we could wait until later in the meeting to officially continue it in case someone comes on.
Sure, we can do that, just to give the if an applicant's agent is present, just to provide them ample time to request a preferred date, for example.
Okay. Yeah, maybe let's just kind of move past it and come back
Sure.
You know, to do that.
Sure.
Okay, so we'll move on to the third item, which is Century Mill Estates review status of subdivision work, bond status review, and consideration of default finding.
Yes, I have to the chair, if I may. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I have requested Andrew Bennetson remove himself from the muting function. I've already asked him to unmute. I believe he is present.
Good.
Evening, sir.
Aye.
Okay, so I know one of the big things we discussed at our last meeting was around execution of the joint check agreement for the part of the as-built plans from Ross Engineering. And I know I actually signed, I know the engineers signed this morning, and I signed it later this afternoon. So we now have that fully executed agreement. And I think the next step, Todd, was, I don't know if you had, in order for the town to issue payment, we needed an invoice from the engineer. I don't know if they had provided
That's-
that to you yet.
That's correct, sir. Yes, they did provide the updated invoice to me yesterday, reflecting the 25,000 for the delivery of the as-built. So that was dropped off here. That makes the internal office workings work that much more smoothly. So he did drop off the invoice here, and we were just waiting for the last signature. Thank you for providing that. And so I should be able to move on that first thing in the morning.
Okay, and what's who actually does it? How does that work? So
The check there, it's called a joint check agreement for that very reason. The check will be issued to both. Typically what is done is that the check is provided to the developer, and the developer will pay the engineer. However, the engineer specifically requested that we write the check out to the engineer, and we do have the ability to honor that request via paragraph 3 of the joint check agreement itself. Ideally, I would like to have permission from Andrew Bennetson to simply just have us cut the check directly to the end to Ross Engineering and just move on from there. I believe he's amenable to that. I would just like to have that reflected in minutes that Mr. Bennetson agrees to do that.
What's the purpose of that?
Well, so Mr. Bennetson, if you take a look at paragraph 3 of the joint check agreement, it stipulates that the town does have the ability to to cut the check directly to the engineer. The engineering firm has requested that the check be paid out to them directly, and that they be the ones to cash the check. For the reasons why, you'd have to ask Mr. Dan Wolf of Ross Engineering, who made the request to me.
I guess it's fine.
Very good. Thank you, sir. So with that, I'll be able to move on that first thing in the morning. I'll be speaking with the finance team, Kristen, and we'll be working from there. Now that I have the invoice provided from Ross Engineering, I can simply process that bill like I would anything else. Because this particular project, those funds are held in a separate account, so it's really just a standard checking deduction effectively.
okay, great. So I assume then, with maybe a day or two of transactional stuff to get that to the engineer, we, have them, they deliver the plans to us, pretty soon, a few days.
That's exactly right. I would like to, just for the sake of posterity, I would like to have the board make a motion and authorize that. Even though this motion has been made and authorized in the past, I would like to have it just for the sake of process, a bit of stickler for those things. I would like to have that freshly dictated today, if that would be all right.
Sure.
Just to keep things clean,
Sure. If someone would like to make a motion to that effect, I'm happy to vote on that.
A simple so moved would suffice.
I think everyone.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mike, I asked you to unmute. I thought you did. I'm so sorry. Let's see. I can't unmute you myself. You have to agree to do so.
It wouldn't let me until you did that.
Well, that's a pain. I'm so sorry about that.
That's okay. Can you please restate what the motion was?
Sure. The motion to pay Ross Engineering to the tune of $25,000 for engineering services in pursuit of obtaining the as-built plans for Century Mill Estate.
I will make a motion to pay Ross Associates the sum of $25,000 for the as-built plans for Century Mill Estates.
Via the joint check agreement.
The joint check.
Second.
Very good. I will begin the roll call vote. I will begin with Pete.
Aye.
Eric? Eric, I asked you to unmute, Eric. Give that a shot. I'm just gonna unmute everybody. It might be easier to simply do that. Okay, everyone does have the ability to unmute themselves, so if you have any
All right.
issues, there we go.
Yeah, I'm good.
I'm so sorry. It doesn't
So
let me
aye.
unmute. There we go. Very good. And let's go to Bob.
Aye.
Thank you, sir. And Michael.
Aye.
Very good. Good to hear your voice. All right, very good. With that, motion carries. Thank you. I will begin processing that first thing in the morning.
Okay, great. And then I think, the next key item of interest for us is related to the peer review funds. And we did get an estimate from Niche Engineering for the peer review of the as-built plans, which I believe included, the work to do the plans, a site visit that probably have to do, and then I think some follow-up, probably review after. And I think it was $2,400 was their estimate.
Yes, that's right. So I have it here. There is a negative peer review account at present, but all that soup to nuts is a combined 8101, because remember that account was in the red to the tune of $5,700, I believe. I can actually pull it up now. The account was presently in red. Yep, there it is. It's presently in the red, 5701.81, and they also gave us an estimate of $2,400 to provide the as-built review and to provide the items that need to be completed. So in aggregate, that total is $81.01.81.
Okay. So I guess, the question to the developer is that.
Yeah, those are from the peer review funds that it's incumbent upon Mr. Benenson to replenish. He was requested back in, actually I have it written down here. It was requested. Yep, they were requested on. Yep. Reached out to Mitch. Back in 2020, back in July of 2020, to replenish those funds, and we have yet to receive those funds into the peer review account. Yeah, there's $7,000 was requested from Benenson on October 1st, 2020. I apologize. The funds have not yet been received.
Okay, so I guess our question to Mr. Benenson is that is there a time we could get for when we can receive those funds so we can have the peer reviewer move forward?
What I'd like to do is pay that amount over a little bit of time, but why don't I send in the funds so that they can do their review now? 2,400.
That's the peer review funds here. We requested those funds back in 2020, and there is not a payment plan available for that item. That account must be at least at bare minimum brought to zero balance before I believe they'll receive work. They'll begin completing work. I will reach out to them, Ross Engineering, to kind of get a stance from them to see where they are at, and what they're willing to do and what they're willing to work with you on. But as these funds have been kind of absent for, since October 1st, 2020, I can't begin to answer on behalf of Ross Engineering. That's largely a matter that's up to them.
Yeah, it's niche.
Yep. Oh yeah,
Ross.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. So I just had Ross Engineering on the line.
Yeah, no, I understand. So
Yeah.
see what they say, and
Sure. Yeah, I'll reach out to Nick and I'll be in communication with you, Andrew, okay?
That'd be fine. Thank you.
Sure, but I will begin processing that $25,000 release to Ross Engineering for the peer review itemization there.
How much money is left in the, if you don't mind,
In what? In the security or?
in the bond after
In the
the
bond?
25? Yeah.
I'd have to take a look, good sir. I'd have to take a look. I'm afraid I don't have that information immediately, but I'll get it to you first thing.
I mean, could that,
It wouldn't be enough to address the delta. It would not be.
no, I know, but it would help close it. Reduce it.
Yeah, that's possibly. Again, that's something I'm gonna have to look at when I'm in the office first thing in the morning. Because I believe I know there's not enough to satisfy the 8101. There might be a few thousand remaining.
I think in the last meeting, it was 30,000 approximately in the bond before the 25. Okay.
So that tracks would be roughly 5,000 in cash bond remaining. So that still isn't enough, but that would still leave a delta of 33,000 and change thereabouts. But again, that I still want to make sure I get accurate numbers from finance tomorrow.
I mean, can that money be used to help close down the delta?
I'd have to look at the language again to see what's permissible and what's not. But again, I'll have to refer to that language when I get back to the office in the morning.
This is John Ballas from Century Mill. So if I'm hearing right from what Andy's saying, I think Andy, you said at the start, you could probably come up with the 2,400 to get them started and running the as-built if you didn't have to cover the back owed amount. So I think what you're suggesting is you could provide that delta of what's owed beyond what's in the bond if they're able to take that, if you could get another joint check agreement with Niche. That's what you're proposing, right, Andy?
Yes.
So I mean, I know the joint check agreement takes a little bit. So I guess to what you were saying, Todd, if you could just pose that to Niche, if they're agreeable to a joint check agreement, if the town can do it with whatever the balance of the bond is, and he can provide the delta check so they can get started while the joint check agreement piece starts, because I know the dates are very tight to get us into this year's annual town meeting. I think I sent you a draft timetable we got last year from the previous builder, the previous planner. And it was getting the as-built delivered on the 24th. So we're basically right where we needed to be last year. I assume the same timetables would probably stand to be
More or
somewhat
less. And that would
agreeable.
that's true, but that's built on the presumption that Niche will be agreeable to another joint check agreement, and I can't.
I
begin
understand
to
that. I
presume-
understand that. So this, what I'm asking is, I mean, part of the reason why I sent this to you 3 weeks ago is to get a similar timetable that we could get forth to get on the annual town meeting this year. Certainly as a resident in this neighborhood, my full expectation is the board and the town will work with us to get to that point. That the planning board made it clear that a lot of the discussions that we tried to have last week were select board discussions. So we need to get past the piece that the planning board can help support and get us closer to that, which is, I think we've made good headway. And I think
Sure.
if we can get to that point where we can get Niche Engineering reviewing it with the delta and work through that can get us closer to that date. And we can, as residents, start talking to the select board about what needs to happen. So, I just,
Sure.
as a resident, I just request that we work as much as we can with Andy to make this happen, and get the review started as soon as possible.
Of course, John. I will do my absolute level best to see that this goes as expeditiously as possible. This is something that I'm taking a personal investment in to see that this is completed to the end on all delinquent subdivisions. These are things that I don't abide by, frankly. So we'll do our level best and we'll do everything that we possibly can.
Thank you for your commitment, Todd. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. You're welcome, sir. Got here not but 4 months ago, and I've been effectively knee deep in this since I first came on. So I'm taking this a little bit personally to see that this is completed at a timely pace. Okay, and with that said, to the chair, can we ask and see if there's a representative from the second agenda item present?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I Are we done with Century Mill Estates?
Well, no, I'm not sure about that. Todd, were you implying that we're done with the third agenda item?
No, I was not. I was simply looking at the agenda and saw that
Okay.
we skipped the item that we moved past. I wanted to make sure that there wasn't a presence from the applicant's representative here, and I didn't see them yet.
I don't believe there is. So I guess the question, going back to something else, when we discussed releasing that money from the bond for the as-built plans, and this was over a year ago, I thought one of the discussion points was that, that was a line item, right, in what the bond was, as-built plans, and the cost had gone up. So is there any issue with, understanding wanting to potentially use some bond money for not really review maybe, but also paying like back, is there any concern with that, Todd, from how I know that was something we talked about when that initial proposal was.
I'd have to take a look at the language that was there for the bond monies. It's a sticky topic because that surety is there to complete the subdivision. However, can it be interpreted that the peer review account is kind of within that process? I think the argument could be made that you could make that argument because it's related to the overall completion of the project. I think that's something in my evaluation stands within that sphere. But granted, I am many things, but I am not a counsel. So perhaps we could ask Brian for his quick legal opinion if he doesn't object.
Yeah, I'd have to revisit if we have an itemization of what the cash bond is securing. I understand that, as you mentioned, there was a line item for the as-built, and that's what was the basis for doing this joint check agreement. I don't know what we may or may not have in the list of what's remaining to be done, whether this is covered. I mean, typically it is not. That's why we have both the bond and the 53G account process. But I'd have to see the specifics.
Same. See, that's why I'm not counsel.
Yeah, I mean, I think, from my perspective, I'm amenable to figure out whatever path forward we can figure out, within what we're able to do. So that wasn't, my question wasn't that I don't want to do that. It's just questioning what,
Sure.
what other, if it was for other items, but I know he has changed a lot over time. So
Very good.
Now, I will just mention, for the sake of mentioning, I mean, the issue goes away if the negative balance of the 53G account is brought to zero and the 2,400 is paid for the as-built review. Then niche goes right on its way and goes forward. I understand Mr. Benson has indicated he's willing to pay that full amount now, but I mean that's what the obligation is in terms of how to get the peer reviewer paid.
yeah, and the response from the peer reviewer did specifically say we can review the as-built plan and provide a letter to the board once the balance is paid. So, sure, I think it's great, Todd, if you have another conversation with them about what they may be amenable to, but at least that's the info that we received.
Sure. Well, okay, I'll have those conversations tomorrow, and I'll send email updates to everyone as they go.
Okay. Was there anything else, Todd, we wanted to discuss on Century Mill? Yeah.
Nothing immediate. I just wanted to make sure that we had that we were able to provide updates on a fully executed joint check agreement, and all the contingent signatures are present. Obtaining those signatures took, I won't call it an inordinate amount of time, but quite a bit more than was originally forecast. So I'm just glad that everything came in time.
Okay. Yeah. So I appreciate all your extensive efforts there. So hopefully by our next meeting, we have the as-built plans and can figure out, a path forward for the review. I guess the thing I would say is, the timelines were mentioned, in the timelines are something that, I think the board is willing to be as flexible as possible, right?
Mhm.
But it's not only up to the board. And so, what we'd like to do is immediately get the as-built plans to the peer reviewer to start their review, because they didn't provide a timeline for their review. That was one thing I didn't see in their response.
True.
So if 2 weeks go by, until our next meeting, and okay, maybe we get the as-built plans, that's a step forward, another step in the right direction. But if we still haven't resolved the peer review funds, that's another 2 weeks where we can't come to a meeting and discuss the review of the as-built plans, right? Not to say that they'd be able to do it by then. I don't know. We could ask that question too, but so just pointing out that, the timelines are getting tight, and if each of these steps takes more, so the most expeditious way is to get the peer review money as soon as possible, and be able to have them start that process.
Agreed.
So can we get a timetable for that? I mean, you're going to talk to Niche tomorrow
Yes.
and determine whether they're amenable to going ahead with a payment for the peer review without having been paid their previous invoice. And at the same time, town council is going to review the agreement to determine whether money can be taken out of the bond for the purpose of the peer review as opposed to physical completion of the project. Is that Mike? Is that an understanding? And if you can get back on that, I mean, this is not deliberation, but communicate to the board what the answer to both of those issues are.
Yes, I can have that conversation tomorrow. I'll be reaching out to them to initiate that conversation tomorrow. And once I get a bit of communication from Niche about them being willing to perform services despite the fact they have an account in arrears, I'll be sure to forward that along to everybody at the board.
But they will undoubtedly want some sort of idea about what contingency there is were they to go ahead and having not been paid arrears to ultimately be paid.
I'll reach out
So
to them.
that links to the question about the bond.
Yes. Sorry, just taking notes.
Pete, are you happy with that?
Yeah, I think that's great. So we'll just move forward, but.
Yeah, I'll initiate those conversations as I mentioned in the morning, and I'll make sure to CC you too if I end up going with the email route if they don't pick up the phone quickly.
And Todd, do you have for last year we had a kind of timetable for road acceptance that had the different steps, and I think as alluded to, it should be about the same, right, this year in terms of.
It should be probably adjusted for the new year, but yeah, it should be roughly the same template, I believe.
Okay.
I do know I do have that template for road acceptance, that timeline for road acceptance that was left to me by Valerie. I'll be referring to that, and I'll share that along as well.
Todd, have you ever seen a decision flow diagram for that? Because we're talking about our part and the selectmen's part and what the implications are of the bonds and financial sureties. It sure would be nice to somehow be able to present those to the folks in the subdivision on how that all works and what the agreed timelines are in the signed agreements and where we stand with respect to that now, without getting into, executive session legal issues.
Sure. I have not seen one to my knowledge on this particular project, but I've seen them before on others.
If I can work with you on that, I just like to understand it since I'm new to the game.
Sure. I was going to ask Council Falk, does your office happen to have any any primers or handouts that can cover any frequently asked questions for this bit of process, just for the edification of other people.
Yeah, I can, I think I provided it to Erica in the past, and that might be what you're referring to, but I can review and just show me what you have and I can update you. But yes, I mean, there's a step-by-step process. I mean, the ultimate deadline is that the select board has to vote to accept the way at least 7 days before the annual town meeting, in which it's going to be voted on by town meeting to formally lay out the way. And so we kind of work backwards from there. That's their deadline. They have to vote their intent to lay out the way. They then have to refer to the planning board. The planning board then has 45 days to issue its recommendation back to the board before the board can before the select board can take that step of voting to formally lay out the way 7 days before a town meeting. So the planning board doesn't have to take all 45 days, but usually when the town is looking at this, they want to give the planning board the full 45 days just so that it is addressed. It can be truncated, but the key for the planning board to be able to make its recommendation back to the board is that its engineer has reviewed the as-built plan, has confirmed that the way is acceptable for or ready for acceptance.
Understood.
If I could just comment, maybe
Bob.
I know I'm supposed to probably address Pete, but I had sent the timetables that were given last year on January 3rd to Todd. I didn't know if he had it already, and I sent the remaining checklist as it stood with the comments as well back to Todd on the 3rd, hoping to get an updated timetable to try to drive towards. So I think that's important to try to get an adjusted one. That's one point. I think that would be great to do. It sounds like Todd's already going to do that.
Yes.
But what concerned me about the last meeting, which I thought there were, and I don't know if it's a fair question to ask here, a lot of the decisions of major points are being deferred to the select board. I'm not sure if there's a question for Pete or Council Falk. How would residents, I'll use the word lobbied for lack of a better term, the select board to rule on our behalf for the best interest of the residents here in terms of our position with respect to taxes owed in the remaining subdivision phase, as well as the affordable housing lot that we were trying to take off the table as far as road acceptance criteria. I don't know if the board supports that position that the residents were putting forth last meeting. I know you said it's a select board decision. But how do we go about having that discussion with the select board? And does the planning board or would the planning board support that position?
So I think from my understanding, and I did see John, that email that you sent with the timeline, right? And I may be making a little bit of an assumption, but I would assume that sort of when this goes, to the select board, right? Part of what the different town boards, anyone who weighs in, is going to give, their information, right? Like, everyone's going to know, they're going to know what's outstanding, right? They're going to get all the information for this. Okay, that the tax collector has this issue or someone else has that issue. And I would assume, and Todd or Attorney Falk, if I'm wrong, I would assume that would be put on an agenda item for a select board meeting for them to discuss the acceptance of the road, and that would be the forum for residents to come and voice their perspectives, and the select board would have the information when they're making those. And as you said, it's back and forth, so it's a couple of votes. So there might be a couple of board meetings where they're discussing it. I would assume that would be the forum, and similar to the planning board, correspondence that comes in, what comes into Todd or the chair, that's shared and disseminated prior to that.
Yeah, and I'll just add, the select board typically does its review of the draft annual town meeting warrant, which, I mean, this is gonna go to town meeting this spring. It would be on that draft warrant, or at least it would be a placeholder in mid-March, but the warrant starts getting drafted, a month or so before then. So, I mean, roughly now is the time, I'm not trying to flood Don Lowe's inbox any more than it already is, but in terms of advocating that you want this to be on the warrant and have the board start that process. I mean, now would be the time to do that.
Okay.
Todd, Vince LaRosa, first of all, I just want to, again, thank all of you, because look, this is a long night, right? A lot of you are volunteers. The one thing I would ask here is, I appreciate Bob's forward thinking here, and to Brian's former thoughts before his last comments. If there's any way we can get ahead of the questions we need to know, right? Like we're really up against it. I'd ask Todd if you could, I understand, John has been trying to email and get some answers between meetings. I certainly understand and respect the position of the town. You can't really respond, but if we can get ahead of some of the questions that need to be answered between meetings, I think, we can get Andy to answer them. And we don't miss this deadline by one meeting because we don't have one question answered. I would just ask this group to just get those questions updated and to Andy as soon as possible, so that we can get this thing, wrapped up. And I appreciate the progress we're making, but I'd hate to miss it because we just have an outstanding question that's still there. And I think Brian, provided a pretty good outline of what needs to happen. And I think we can certainly make it happen, but I just don't want to miss that deadline. So I'd be remiss if I didn't say that, but thank you all. And hopefully we can get this thing locked up.
To the chair, if I may.
Yeah, please.
I would like to express my personal gratitude. Thank you, Vince. I will be working on this to get as many of these questions answered and communicated over to Andy and amongst all the parties involved. Thank you for your understanding. I really do appreciate it, person to person. Thank you.
Todd, thank you. It's our pleasure. We all have the same end goal in mind. I know there's a lot of tired folks on the line. You guys are dealing with a lot, but if there's anything we can do as a town to make, or excuse me, as a community to make this thing, work a little faster, we're here. But we realize there's a little that can be done at this point between meetings. So just please continue to keep communication high, and we'll do whatever we can. And we certainly appreciate your understanding.
Sure thing. We're all on the same team. I'm completely with you.
Okay. Well, I think we at least have what we want to do, between now and our next discussion around the peer review situation. Is there anything else that we need to discuss on this item tonight?
I know it's been a long call, and I thought I saw Randy here. I don't know if that was Randy, the DPW guy, but do we know anything about his findings on the light? Like just a quick answer could be fine.
Oh, yeah, we did receive, sorry, I forgot about that. Yeah, we did receive a memo from the DPW director. We just got this to the board today. And so, I took a quick look through this, right? And one thing, my thought, first of all, share the frustration of everyone about this, because I know it was discussed ad nauseum several years ago and thought we had resolved it. My understanding is that it is the DPW, it is at their discretion to grant a permit to install the light. And there's some questions about the type of light, right? One thing, so my feeling, what I propose we do on this is, if this was, I think it was discussed like 3 or 4 years ago, right? I recall the discussion, at least at that time. I think it was discussed even further back than that. Some of the folks on the board, this is like 2 town planners ago, different DPW director. not to say that's an excuse. My recollection of it was the discussion was really focused around concerns from abutters, near where the light was going to be installed about, having a big, highway style, spotlight illuminating the neighborhood. Right. And we were trying to balance, what was needed versus those concerns. I don't recall offhand, details such as, which departments were consulted. Did we consult with police, fire, DPW? We usually do for things like that, get feedback. And then I know from the communications I've seen that somehow the design review board got involved. So what I was thinking we could do is actually go back to, our meeting minutes or any correspondence we could find about this discussion to make sure we have that information. Certainly anything that people can remember. One thing that I noted from the letter that DPW director sent was somewhere in here. It said that something along the lines of, I can't find it right now, but he assumed that the intent of this light was to, I wanted to be sure that the light installed to fully illuminate the roadway intersection, as I assume is what it was intended, right? From my recollection, I'm not sure that was actually the intent of this, because I know it was discussed that, in Bolton, we don't have streetlights, along roads. We don't have them at every intersection, a lot of our intersections. So I thought that but I don't remember, specifically enough, and would like to go back, because perhaps that information that was discussed at the time, which once again was before, current DPW director was in the position, I believe, he might not have that information as to why this is chosen. So that was my thought, just given what I remember about how we could try to resolve this issue. I also don't think that this is like a major thing that's going to hold up moving forward, right? Like even if we were still trying to sort this, I don't think this would stop the planning board from recommending the road. Like, I can't speak for everyone, but I don't think we'd say, oh, we can't recommend the road for acceptance because this light issue that we already discussed hasn't been figuring out. So that's my feeling. But now that we've got this sort of letter from the DPW director, basically asking us to, I seek the board's guidance on installation and would like to get information that we have from when it was discussed, what we can, and then go back to him, with our educated guidance. That's my thought. I'm open to other suggestions.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, all my recollection of any talk, first of all, we waived all the other lights within the development. And if anything, the neighborhood didn't want that light there. So I think we kind of fell on it just being kind of a decorative, non-obtrusive light. I don't think the intent was for it to be, I don't know what the term is, a street legal, light that put out so many lumens and lit, I don't think that was the intent at all. So, I mean, I don't even know if we could just waive this light as well. I don't know that anybody even cares about this light. So
Todd, if I may, Todd.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Pete. Excuse me. I should have directed that to you. So a couple things. One, thanks for the comments. To your point about holding up the designation of the roads, we've been looking at, and I say this with all due respect, we've been looking at two very ugly circles, and the planning's in there. And we've been working with our trustee that will not allow us to do upgrades there because the designs are specific to those specific specs, and so we can't do anything there. So, we're cautious on what we do. As far as the light, Eric, that's a great point that you made. The lights actually, there were several lights. There was 3 different lights. Those 3 were struck down from the neighborhood. The neighborhood didn't want those. To my recollection, I don't want to speak for the entire neighborhood, but I believe the neighborhood did want the light at the front. And my understanding was EMS did want that to light up the neighborhood entrance because it is very dark there. We looked at uplighting. We have a really nice entrance sign on the front of the entrance, and we looked at uplighting. We were told by the town that that's light pollution and we couldn't do that. So that's when we moved to the light that we have now. And that was to illuminate the entrance for EMS, medical, any fire emergency. But that was the conversation there. So again, I want it to be twofold, right? So there's one, what can we approve on, and what do we want and what is it expected? Pete, I'm sure you can appreciate this. A lot of these meetings run together. We've been through a lot of these. So I couldn't tell you what year or certainly what meeting that was discussed. But I do recall that conversation because we simply wanted uplighting, just something to illuminate the neighborhood, because it is very dark when you're coming down that road and you're entering into Hudson.
There was no, I don't remember any mention of like specs and lumens and it has to meet this. I think it was more just, light it up a little bit. I don't think.
That's right.
It wasn't
That's
like,
right.
A standard street light.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you, Eric.
That's my understanding, Eric.
Vince is right. I mean, that we wanted, I think the neighborhood wanted a light at the end, but we weren't talking about, it has to be, you're not lighting up a crosswalk. You're not lighting up a four-way intersection, having something that's decorative that won't shine a bright light on the neighbors because they didn't want that. That's why we did the dark sky or dark night or whatever it's called. So having a light that hit those specs, still had some lighting for here's an entryway, and it's going to show that there's an entryway, but it doesn't have to be as bright at the left side as is the right side. I don't think that type of specs is a requirement. So I agree with everything you guys are saying. I think obviously from Vince's perspective, we do want a light out there. I think it will look nice. I think you guys picked a good light, and just getting past that. I think the reason why I'm bringing it up, and I understand what you're saying, Pete, it's not going to hold up the neighborhood approval. It's another line item that's on there. And it's a line item that Andy has already paid for. It's already in a warehouse. It's already approved to be installed by the installer. We're just waiting to get the okay. So any line item that we can get taken off the road acceptance criteria that Andy has already funded, obviously funding is a big issue here, we're trying to make happen. And so the reason why I'm pushing it is because this is already purchased. It's already in the electrician's hands. We all think it's okay, but the DTPW director is being very diligent. And I don't think that's necessary. So I agree with what you guys are saying. If you can go back and say, that's not the intent, it doesn't need to meet the specs of a highway light that illuminates an on-ramp, then let's go ahead and give it approval, right?
Yeah, I don't know, Pete or Todd, or if you guys could respond to the DPW director. And I don't know, Todd, if you can dig for the meeting where we talked about it, you'd probably never be able to find it, but
I will do my level best to hop into the archives and see what I can find.
I don't even know if it's good to maybe we vote here and say that where the planning board is fine with the light, and his question in the letter was, what was the intent? And
that's what I was getting at. I'm so sorry to interrupt you there. Given that this was the light selected by the design review board, makes me think that this item's selection was largely aesthetic in nature, as opposed to functional in nature.
Exactly.
So that leaves a little bit more credence to that line of thinking. And I'm going to be doing some digging on this fact to see if that was the only sole criteria that was used for evaluating this or selecting this particular light over any other installation, given that they wanted the folks there wanted them to be dark sky compliant. That would lead me to agree with why this one doesn't provide the same lumen output as a traditional street lamp would imply. But I'll be doing some digging on that. Given that given that it was selected by design review, like I said before, it leads me to believe it was largely aesthetic in nature rather than something that was there to perform a direct function.
Yes, I think
Todd, for what it's worth, sorry, Eric.
Go ahead, Vince.
Todd, for what it's worth, just to narrow your search down, it was pre-COVID. It was at a live meeting. I do remember the conversation. We were at a live meeting. But I do recall, to just cross-reference your point, I actually do believe it was functional. I mean, it does not need to be lit up. To John's point, this is not a bright light, but the functionality of this light, of course, it would be nice, but the functionality of this light was for EMS to be able to identify our neighborhood in an emergency.
For
that
landmarking.
was the conversation for landmarking, and that was my recollection. And it was a pre-COVID live meeting that discussion did happen. And it was at the same discussion where we did knock down and said that the other lights that were in the neighborhood were going to be struck down and we were not going to have those. But that was the simple reason why we agreed on that final light at the entrance.
Understood. Okay, thank you. That helps me narrow the search down.
And actually,
Thank you.
in the letter, the recommendation was transmitted by the town planner in June of 2019.
That's
So that
correct.
was the recommendation for which light. So we probably had that discussion a little bit before that, because then we asked the design review board to weigh in. So it probably would have been first half of 2019. And I think it actually went over a couple meetings because there was so much concern from abutters on it. But that would be a time frame. And like I said, we usually check with other departments, right? We would check police. I don't know if we checked with the DPW on this, if they had any concerns at the time, but any of that info we had, we could just provide, with a letter back to Randy, and hopefully that would, he would understand the intent, and then it would.
Sure.
It would this.
That's really what I was trying to get at, is to get to the crux of what was intended at the time of debate, or at the time of deliberation, really. And from there, that would help inform the process today. And also, by extension, what we can then communicate to the DPW chief. If he's looking to have one of us speak to the intent, I'd like to have that evidenced by something. So that makes sense. That makes sense.
I mean, if we put up a street light that illuminates the whole intersection, the neighbors on that road are going to go crazy, right? I mean, they were very vehement that they did not want that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I grew up in Ocam, which is about as in the sticks as one could ever ask for. And I can assure you they would be motivated to not see that happen too.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I do want to reiterate that there was many planning board meetings about the lights, that whether people wanted any lights in the development, and all the lights were eliminated except for the light at the entrance. Specific types of lights were submitted to the board. It was discussed in meetings, and then I got an email, like you said, from the town planner, basically saying, this is a light we would like to have. The chairman of the planning board wants. I've never heard of any design review committee. I never dealt with a design review committee. I've only ever dealt with the planning board. So I just was trying to, make this an easy thing, because this whole light discussion went on for a long time, whether we even wanted any lights. And then finally, when the decision then was made, I got an email saying, this is the light we would like.
I think everyone is in agreement about the light. And
so I went out and bought that light. And it's a very expensive light, by the way. But I just wanted the whole thing over with, and went out and bought it. I mean, I don't know what more I'm supposed to do than I get a email from the planning director saying this is the light that the chairman recommends goes in. And okay, I did it. So I just want to, this was not a light I selected or anybody else selected. It was basically a selection of the planning board.
So
what? No, the DPW director has requested our. I know this was a little discussion at our previous meeting, and after communicating with the town administrator, we were hoping that it could be worked out, right? And now that DPW director has asked for our guidance, I think we can pretty quickly provide that to him, look into the history, see what's there, and then provide that guidance to him, and hopefully that will resolve the issue.
If the light is not, the location of the light shows on the subdivision plans. I think that the light could be moved closer to the intersection, or even a little bit inside the development if you wanted. But Again, we're just, we are going by what the plans say, where it's supposed to be,
Okay.
just because it's hard to make, it's cumbersome to say, well, do you want to move the light location or whatever? I mean, it's not easy to get things like that.
Dare I suggest we go back to the horse's mouth, talk the chair of the design review board, Michelle Tuck, and ask her what the functional need for the light was. I think you will get an answer that is consistent with what we discussed over the last half hour.
Yeah, again, I never heard of a design review committee being involved. That's completely new to me. I never dealt with anyone like that. I just dealt with the board.
I can speak, if you don't mind, to the chair, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
Design review boards, often known as design review committees or commissions, are quite common. Typically, as you get closer into Middlesex County, typically as you go eastwards, or in some of the westerly parts of the Berkshires, you have quite a few design review boards. Those municipalities tend to follow more form-based code iteration of zoning practice, as opposed to what Bolton does, but they are exceedingly common, promise.
I'm not saying they're not common. I'm just saying that, to my knowledge, I never heard the word design review committee ever involved with this
Andy,
thing.
it's just an advisory board that we probably.
Yeah, no, I'm
requested.
just saying,
It reports to the planning board. They gave us a recommendation. We approved it. Like we really don't need to discuss this anymore.
Yeah,
the board agree. The board picked out that light. We agree with that light. We will tell the DPW director that we're okay with that light.
Sounds perfect.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. So thanks, everyone. I think unless there's anything else to discuss tonight on Century Mills, we'll put that in our agenda for next week, particularly, and try to hopefully have a resolution to the peer review situation.
That's taking copious notes.
Okay.
Is Century Mill going to be on the agenda for the next meeting? And when is that?
I believe so. At least if nothing else, I mean, I don't want to presume. I don't want to speak on behalf of the chair, but I would like to see at least an updated line item to provide updates for what progress has been made since today.
Yeah, I mean, let's definitely have it on the agenda. The meeting's in 2 weeks, February. I don't know what that.
The
7th-ish.
8th.
Yeah, and if there's nothing, if we've got peer review money in the plans and they're being reviewed and everything discussed, we can, just say that. But I think putting it on the agenda makes sense.
Agreed.
Hey, thank you.
Okay. Our next agenda item is the. I guess maybe we should just go back to agenda item number 2, and assume we need to continue the backland lot special permit.
Yeah, I would like to see if there's. I don't think we have anyone new that's arrived on behalf of the applicant, so I would advise continuing also.
I will make a motion to continue the backland lot special permit and common driveway permit for 62 South Bolton Road until maybe use our second meeting in February, Todd.
Yeah, that's you kind of read my mind there a little bit, Mike. I'm thinking we do that would be the 22nd, if I recall.
Until February 22nd.
Second.
Very good. I will take a roll call vote. I will begin with Pete.
Aye.
Eric.
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
And Michael.
Aye.
Very good. Motion carries. I will continue to the 22nd.
And maybe Todd, when you have a chance, you could just communicate with them, because if they were trying to join the meeting, earlier when we were in the executive session, they may not have.
Sure. I'll reach out to them as well.
And okay, the fourth item on the agenda, which is the continued Fospred definitive plan for South Bolton Road. Do we have anyone on to discuss that, or are we kind of in the same situation? Maybe?
Did they ask for a continuance?
They have not reached out to me, but this meeting has run kind of long, so it's hard to say if they have come and gone since. I did want to reach out to everyone here on the board, letting you know that we did receive our environmental impact analysis, and I have had a chance to not only give it a good look through, but also share it with Rebecca, because some of the items that were found within the environmental impact analysis are in the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission and not strictly within the jurisdiction of us here at the Planning Board. Notably on sensitive species impact and things of that nature, and wetlands also presence. So I've already been in communication with Rebecca regarding that EIA, and so it's not quite within our umbrella, so to speak. I do know they are due to appear in April. I remember Rebecca mentioning that before conservation.
And was that really the last thing we were sort of waiting on from them before making a decision?
That was amongst its last item as well. Yeah.
And would we need to wait until? Would we need to wait, or would we? How would that work?
We would be able to act provided everything else was in order. That was the only real hanging item there, was whether or not this necessitated peer review in the environmental sense. And upon taking a look at it, I already directed it to Rebecca in terms of wetlands items and sensitive species items under MESA, Massachusetts Endangered Species Act, to see if any items there kind of provoke her attention, but nothing that's within our jurisdiction.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I guess we should obviously continue until the applicant's here, but we're, maybe prior to that, Todd, if you can just double check that it's been a little while since been a lot of other things going on, but if we're good to make a decision, we could review the past notes and let the applicant know that, and then whatever. Sure. That should be pretty straightforward, right? I think we really went through that one pretty thoroughly.
Yeah, I believe so. And also another item, provided that's already buttoned up, we do have the annual report coming up for our submittal that needs to be in by mid-February. That's what Jenny was asking all departments to make sure that they have the board review and affirmatively vote on the annual report. So I'm in the middle of assembling that now. So I would like to have a draft for you guys by the 8th, provided I have the time. And my open time is a vanishing resource, but I will do my level best to make sure that we get it on time.
Sure. Yeah, no, I appreciate all your efforts during everything that's going on.
Good for this stuff.
Okay, so let's continue this then. What would you like to do, Todd, for timing?
I would like to have, ideally, I would like to have the Martha Fospert item also move to the 22nd to provide ample breathing room for items that are being moved to the 8th already, because there's some items that are still up in the air and I don't know where they're going to land yet. So I'd like to see that on the 22nd if the board would approve.
Sure, sounds good to me.
I will make a motion to continue the definitive subdivision plan approval and Fospred for Bolton Assessor's Map 2C Parcel 23 on South Bolton Road until February 22nd, 2023.
Second.
Very good. I will begin roll call vote. I will start with Pete.
Aye.
Eric.
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
And Michael.
Aye.
Excellent. With that, motion carry item is continued to the 22nd of February. Thank you, John.
Okay. Fifth agenda item is United Cultivation initial pre-application discussion.
Yes, I was going to say, do we have Mike? There you are. Nice to see you.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for hanging in with us there. I know it's been a long night.
Yeah, it's been interesting to listen, but
It's been colorful. Sure.
yeah, that's okay. I've been through a few of these, so thank you for the time. I do believe Greg Roy has joined from Dillis and Roy. Really, the purpose of this, as you know, United Cultivation, UC Retail, our subsidiary, is attempting to site a marijuana retail establishment at the Country Cupboard location, the vacancies to the right. As part of that process, we've been slowly working through some of the state approval processes. We've become pretty familiar with the special permit rules and regulations that Bolton adopted early on in 2022. Greg had, on our behalf, put together a letter reviewing some of the requirements, and based on some of the feedback early on, some conversations with Valerie in 2022, our intent was always to have kind of a preliminary discussion with the board to talk about some potential waivers and really our approach to the application. So that is what we're attempting to do tonight. I'm not sure if the entire board was able to review the letter from Greg, but maybe we can talk through that a little bit now, and I can answer any other questions that might be pertinent to some preliminary discussion before we formally submit a special permit application.
To the chair, if I may.
Good. Yeah, go ahead.
I would just direct, Mike, I did send that email that I received later on this afternoon to everyone at the board. It's unlikely that everyone was able to review all of it in depth, but I had some time to chew on it and review some of the proposed waivers. And I believe, given the fact that Country Cupboard and the entire structure there is pre-existing, many of those waivers are not outside the realm of my outside the realm of reason in my estimate.
Great. Then just, I know, Greg, are you on? Is there any questions that you had? I think you might be.
Yeah, I am on. Hey, everybody. I know you've had a long meeting, so I appreciate you hearing us here. I don't have any specific questions. I just wanted to summarize basically, to Todd's point, he just summarized it almost perfectly. Really the nature of the waivers we're asking for are things like stormwater management, landscaping, those type of things that would be more appropriate if we were constructing a new site. We do intend to come before you when we submit the special permit application with a site plan. So we do intend to document things like parking and traffic flow and all that thing, but it's going to be more of an existing conditions plan with some changes that we may need to make for accessibility and that kind of thing. But I didn't want the board to think that we were going to be absent a site plan. We have actually done the survey at the property recently, actually in preparation for the formal special permit filing. It's just that there's a few of the regulations that seem to us to be appropriate if we were building a new building on a vacant site. Things like stormwater and landscaping features and things where we're on an existing site where we thought those waivers were appropriate. And so that's one of the reasons we're here tonight. The other reason is just to kind of have an informal discussion and to get any insight from your board relative to this process. I guess anything that we should be aware of as we're moving towards the formal special permit application. Any concerns, I guess, that you have relative to the use in general, but relative to the use on that site? I guess we'd like to hear them so that we can be responsive to them when we come before you with a formal special permit. And again, I know it's been a long meeting, a lot of on your plate, but that's why we're here. So we appreciate the time.
No, thanks very much. For the overview. We haven't had one come before us. Since at all, right? Obviously, that, and we adopted those rules and regulations last year after a lot of discussion. I think a lot of the discussion that I recall on that is, things we were more concerned about from an establishment that would be doing cultivation, right? Things like, water usage and sewer and odors and things like that. There was some, security type discussions, which would probably be somewhat relevant here, although we consulted with our police department, who felt that, I can't remember exactly, but the regulations are obviously pretty strict, right?
Yeah.
It has. So yeah, I mean, I think from my perspective, kind of what you just described of, what we'd want to see would be in that existing kind of, use and how, parking might be affected and traffic flow and, what kind of estimates, you'd have on, things like what are the hours going to be and what estimates, on people in and out. And I mean, that parking lot sometimes is dead empty and sometimes it's crazy. I know a lot of the from what I've seen from the, retail establishments, usually not that busy, or they haven't been, in the past years since they're becoming more prevalent. But I think those are kind of things from my perspective that, we'd probably be interested in seeing, and probably, folks from the town would be interested in, discussing and hearing about. I mean, but from just looking through kind of what, the preliminary waivers, I mean, there's nothing that stands out at me as like a major concern. And I don't really recall off the top of my head, when we were discussing the rules and regulations, if there were things we were really getting into specific to, a retail establishment that are kind of outside of, what you have here. I think it'd be more concerning, right, if it was a new retail establishment, a new building, or a new place.
Yeah, of course.
Everyone within the board of the town kind of knows the country covered area, and can kind of, when you come to us in more detail, can see how it fits in there. So I don't know. That's my perspective. If anyone else has any comments?
To the chair, if I may.
Go ahead, John.
I do remember when I was living and working in Barrie, I was part of the. I was brought on, and actually I was part of the planning board at Barrie because I was living there at the time, and they brought me in as professional guidance to serve on the board and provide professional planning experience for the creation of a sensible bylaw, cannabis bylaw, that also keeps the very onerous regulations of 935 CMR 500 intact and kind of works hand in glove with those. The restrictions that the Triple C places upon not only everything from product manufacturers to cultivation to dispensaries and general retail practice, those regulations are quite exhaustive and quite extensive. So the fact that they've been able to get this far along shows that they've demonstrated a willingness to work within the regulatory structure, and also that they've taken the time to review the regs and the wants and needs that Bolton has, and the fact that they're willing to comply with them and meet with us for an initial pre-application discussion bodes well. Given that they've submitted the memo that I forwarded to all of you, some of the waivers that they're seeking make sense, given the fact that they're looking to occupy an established, already constructed structure, as opposed to something that would be new construction, for which I wouldn't advise providing any of those regulatory waivers if they were looking to build something fresh, new, stick built, or anything like that. But given that they've already kind of extended a glove forward, I presume, Mike, you already have your host community agreement already negotiated in place?
Correct. Yes. So we negotiated that last year with the town. We have since submitted our state application, so we can submit and have approval on our state application prior to receiving special permit. But prior to going to any final license status, obviously all of our permitting in town needs to be active. So we actually currently already operate a dispensary out in Ashby. We have a second one going in Groton. So we've been doing this a little while.
Thank you. I was about to ask, you already have a provisional license and are you already in operation in other areas?
Yeah. So we have our license application has not been deemed complete, but we've gone through the RFI process with the Cannabis Control Commission.
Yeah.
So
the RFI. Yeah, the RFI process for others' edification is the request for information. It's literally just a to and fro exchange of question and answers from the CCC, the Cannabis Control Commission, to the would-be operator. And that can be a long tennis game back and forth of questions answered and questions asked back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah.
That's common. That's the end of my questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with Pete and Todd that it's more of like a tenant situation. So I don't see any stormwater issues. I'd definitely be more interested in making sure the parking's good and making sure ingress and egress are all set. But all those other ones in the nitty-gritty stormwater erosion control, I don't see that being an issue to waive personally.
How much space in that building are you planning on?
So these two units that are on the end will be combining, so it's roughly about 2,100 square feet or less, I believe.
So there was the laundromat, which I don't know if it's still there. There was the dog watch place, and then the pet store.
Yeah,
right?
those two main levels, unit 3 and 4.
So
you're
that's the whole bottom level.
Yes.
Okay.
Are you gonna have the second floor too, or just the?
Nope, just the main floor. Yeah.
Yeah, so like, I don't know if there's gonna be extra lighting requirements for security or if there's anything we have to deal with that, I'm not sure, but.
Yeah, the Cannabis Control Commission has a pretty significant security requirement in terms of, ambient lighting in the areas, but everything from, my experience and what we've done already, the existing conditions on the site and the property seem to match that. Obviously, our security infrastructure is pretty significant. We've already sat with the police department in town on a couple of occasions to discuss kind of those protocols. And we'll present all that as part of that special permit because you're going to want to see it, right? So we'll have a security integrator. We have taken access to the space via lease. So we are an existing now tenant moving in. So we plan on hopefully in the coming month tightening up what we expect that floor plan layout to be, et cetera. So that would be something that would be shared as well.
When did you guys finalize the community impact agreement? Is there like a deadline coming up or?
No, I believe we're in good shape. I think I have to look actually. I believe it was in the spring timeframe. So we are, so what's written into your host community agreements is one of the parameters is that if you do not at least apply for a special permit within 12 months of attaining your host community agreement, like there's an opportunity for the town to back out of the situation. But in speaking with Don, obviously we've kind of a mutual interest in this. So if we get close to that, we'll look at potentially extending that.
Yeah, no, you know what? If I'd be remiss if I didn't say we're here before you in January through no fault of the applicant. It's really the fault of his really busy engineer. So we really were hoping to be before you last fall with this exercise, or a month or two ago.
So Greg, as they say, it's not how you start, it's how you finish.
That's right. I was just going to say. We're here now.
That's why we like. That's why we like you, Greg. You're honest with us.
I had to say that because I want to make sure that that Mike isn't viewed as unresponsive. He did reach out to me probably August timeframe here. So we've been working on this since then, believe it or not. So anyway, we're moving forward now. I just wanted to make sure that the board was aware that Mike and his team are very responsive. We actually work with him on their Groton site as well. So yeah. So I just want to make sure everybody.
I mean, one thing to the chair, if I may add. One thing I would advise is it seems, and I don't want to speak for the board, it's not my place, but it does seem like matters of parking would be items that should at least be brought to your concern, more so than some of the other items that you would request. You would be requesting a waiver from. Matters of parking look to be like they might be of highlighted importance compared to the rest of the concert you've asked for.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons we did a complete existing conditions survey out there to put together a plan, and we're not asking for a waiver in total from your site plan regulations, we understand traffic and parking will definitely be the subject, an important part of the special permit process, review process. So we fully understand that. We'll have that, all that information, site planning and to support it, and backup information as part of the application.
Are you doing a traffic study as part of that?
So that's a great question. I guess we're interested in hearing what the board envisions relative to that.
I mean, given the fact that 117 is the most trafficked thoroughfare throughout Bolton, that leads credence to make me think that it might necessitate that. But of course, that decision is within the purview of the board, so I defer to their judgment.
One thing I will add just to that point, obviously we've been operating these establishments. So what the market looked like 2 years ago when there was 100 retailers in the state when we came online to what it looks like now where we're approaching 300. Our average customer counts per hour, depending on the day, typically end up in the 10 to 15 range, and on a busier time, you're looking at maybe 20 to 25 with an average turnaround time of, a handful of minutes tops. So, our facility in Ashby, even in busier times, it's usually only a few cars coming and going. Obviously, we can't predict what's going to happen at the site, but we anticipate, the days of those long traffic lines and all the fun stuff that happened back in 2018-19 have definitely shifted quite a bit. So,
I agree with that. It's just, that's a busy parking lot. Most days, the stores that you'd be replacing, again, the dry cleaner and the pet store, were never particularly busy. So I think that this store, even with decreased amount of traffic, based on the number of new establishments, it's still going to be adding to it. So I would definitely, personally, I would want to see a traffic study.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to take a left out of that parking lot onto 117, sometimes, right? 117 crazy.
Not sometimes anymore.
Yeah.
I get my lunch at Subway more often than I would like to brag about, and it's kind of dangerous.
Yeah. I mean, even the fact that you can ingress and egress through both of the entrances there makes it kind of tough. So I don't know. I mean, I would like to see that made safer.
I agree. I think kind of the Country Cupboards benefited from the pet store and the dry cleaner not being very busy, and some people come in one naturally and out the other. So I think, I don't know about traffic study, but at least ingress and egress plan, and the number of cars coming in and out of the parking lot, and maybe the added traffic would necessitate a traffic study. So getting all those numbers and looking at that overall would be good.
Well, I mean, think about it. You have one exit up on Route 62. You have two dispensaries that are on the same road that are right there as well. And, I mean, they busy times of the day with that whole area. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal, to be honest with you.
Yeah, like traffic wise, I don't think it's going to add, it'll be like, a drop in the bucket, but I'm just more worried about the safety of the ingress and egress of that parking lot.
As somebody who lives on 117, I assure you, there have been so many drops in the bucket.
Just a drop.
No, I do think it would be, what is, first of all, I think its location is brilliant. The number of people that come off 495 to get a Subway or do whatever there is amazing, and to have the throughput there at the same time for a cannabis facility, I think is great. But at the same time, it's going to add significantly, and it would be interesting to note what the current traffic load, egress, ingress, and direction currently is, and what I suspect is going to be customers almost entirely coming from the west and turning back to go on up or back onto 495 is something that needs to be looked at.
Yeah, I mean, I almost feel like going going east on 117, like that first entrance. Maybe the first entrance isn't in and the second entrance is out. I'm not sure, but it does. I could imagine it would get messy, so I think we should look at that as a whole.
Agreed.
Good feedback. Thank you.
I only have our car come out of the driveway 4 times a day, and it's a challenge.
Saying I've lost a little bit of weight not going into Subway all that often. Just saying.
See, there's.
We laugh, but it's sadly true.
I think they're looking for a spokesman, Subway.
Yeah.
No, thank you. No, thank you. I'm a foolish man, but I'm not a fool. I guess I don't know.
And just
Pete, I
to
didn't have
speak
any
to-
other comments.
Yeah, just quickly too, to speak to obviously the timing, our business plan, we're trying to do these things as fast as possible, right? So, we understand the process. We've been through this before. We're very transparent and open in our business practices, but our goal is to continue to move as fast as we can, right? And I think that's in our best interest, in the town's best interest, but we'll keep this going. Greg and I will kind of circle back on some things, and we're hoping that in the near future that you'll see our formal application submission.
Sure thing. And to the chair, if I may. Yeah, feel free to email me or call whenever you need.
Great, thank you.
I'm here to be of service, so whatever you need.
I appreciate that, Todd.
Seeing that Jane's online as well, I was just wondering, I know we saw a plan about an overall renovation. I think you did part of it. Is this they're gonna be more external renovations, or is it just kind of an internal thing? I don't know if you guys even know that yet.
No, it's gonna be, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I wasn't. It's gonna be external, but I was waiting to know that they're going in and everything is progressing before we work with them for outside. As far as the traffic, I want everyone to understand that store has been there and it's done the best sales with the traffic inflow and outflow. It really needs both of those egresses and ingress to not get it backed up. If you try to do one in one, in and one out, it's not going to work.
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily pushing. I was just just questioning, if it needs to be looked at.
Okay. Yeah. No, we're gonna do landscaping and everything. We've been waiting for things to come in for outside. You can see how long it took to get the wall done because they could not get the material. Now we're waiting for railings and things like that, and then we'll work with Mike and United Conservation and get the right lighting. It's got to be right for the country public too. We've been there to have it be anything else, so everything has to go good. They are tenants, we're the landlords, so it has to be right. So we've always tried to do it right. It will be. Does that answer your question, Eric?
Yeah.
No, I can tell.
No, it did. Yeah, I was just wondering, so it sounds like there will be some external renovation,
Yes.
based on the previous plans we had seen. Or
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that side of the building has to have more. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. I thought you had some overhang kind of porch or something. I don't know if that's still in the works or not.
We eliminated that because
Okay.
Safety for the north side of the building. When the snow comes, we've had so much snow in the last couple of years that we saw it was going to be a problem. So we're going to put small overhangs, but nothing like you saw in the original.
Yeah, that's fine. I was just wondering.
Yeah. It will look nice.
Great.
Yeah, and I would welcome any interest, if anyone ever has any questions as it relates to our current processes, our existing establishments. In some of the other towns we've operated in, they've come in and walked through to understand, what the process flow looks like, right? Because not everybody gets to see behind the curtain of what an operation looks like and the security and features. So anybody on the board has any interest in seeing more or understanding how it looks real time, like you're welcome to set that up for sure.
I imagine both myself and Mike Savage would like to do a site visit when it feels appropriate.
Yeah, and we deal with Mike and Ashby because he's the building inspector there as well. So we've been working with him for some time now.
Yeah.
So great. Well, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks everyone for the comments. Appreciate your patience and coming in to talk to us in advance. We always like that, and wish you the best and hope to see you again soon.
Great. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Feel free to reach out to me whenever you need. Okay.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Have a good evening.
Appreciate it.
Take care. Bye. And then there were 8 rather.
Okay, so the only other thing on here was just town planner report. If there's anything else you need to want to tell us at the hour.
I mean, I think you guys have gotten a good look under the hood on some of the things I've been chewing on over the past 2 weeks. I will say that the amount of available time that I have to allocate to given projects is vanishingly small. So I do my level best to make sure that everything is accorded as it needs to be. Aside from that, I'm still waiting on some other folks that have given rumblings that they're looking to apply, but there's nothing that's been submitted to my desk yet, so I can't really speak to whether or not those will materialize or not. But as soon as they do, you can be gosh sure that I'm going to be sharing that with you. Aside from that, I do already have some marching orders for the first thing tomorrow morning, and I'll be working on those matters, especially with the peer review with some of our more troublesome subdivision developments. I'll be working on those the first thing as soon as I get into the morning, and then I'll be keeping you guys apprised of everything and sending out pulses as it comes in. And yeah, I imagine you guys will be hearing from me. Yeah, more so than usual. I'm so sorry, but you'll be hearing from me quite a lot.
My one question is, seeing how subdivisions are so fun. Have you heard anything about the West Berlin Road property? I know that's
not since their last submittal, no. And while we are on the topic of subdivisions, if we're going to be forward thinking, we really ought to include including a maintenance provision under 81Q, making sure that we at least have that in the books and literally in the book, so that way for any future subdivision items that come in, because I know that high quality developable parcels are in increasingly short demand within Bolton. The subdivision items that are likely going to be come across our desk and across this board, they're likely going to have more problems within them than we would like to see. So at least at the bare minimum, we can have the 81Q maintenance provision for snow clearing and snow removal and maintenance. We really ought to have that on the books faster than slower, just to avoid pound for pound. I think it's the ounce of prevention for probably a metric ton of cure, to put it kind of bluntly. I think it's really in our best interest to see that happen quicker than slower.
Hey, Pete, one thing that came up, and Todd's aware of it in our conversations with Ryan on lots 7 and 8 on Meadow Road, is the aggregate effect of having 4 lots being developed simultaneously without communication among them. And it started off with a discussion of the drainage on the combined driveways of 7 and 8. And then Mark brought up the fact that Mark Case had spoken to National Grid, and they now are going to have to, in order to service those 2 lots, probably put in another pole on the east side of the road on the west side of the road, on Scott Slater's land. And then in order to provide power to the 2 houses further down that are being developed, what is that, 5 and 6?
Yes.
But
I think it was
4 and 5.
That's it. It was
in
4
any
and 5.
case, the next 2 down, they're now going to have to put in additional poles, and they're going to have to run poles up at least 1 driveway, and that's going to involve a tree hearing that's gonna basically take out all the trees on the east side of the road. And so what we're looking at now is,
Oh, my God.
you know, one tree hearing for one driveway, followed by,
Another
hopefully,
tree hearing for the others.
yeah, a much bigger tree hearing.
I mean, I've been saying this, like, I don't know what legally we have rights to, but the way that this property was developed is kind of just irks me how it's like they kept on individually A&R in them. And I know by the books that those are legal lots and stuff, but just it's a shame that we couldn't look at the property as a whole and how it ended up. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
and to your point, Eric, in the discussion that we had on Monday, if you take the 4 lots and look at driveways, a driveway could have been put up and run up a relatively low slope up the easternmost or the northernmost lot, and then run along with very little slope or very little drainage problem along the top, and eliminated tree hearings, everything. could have been
Exactly.
eliminated.
Yeah. I mean,
That's why chapter
so
41 exists.
I don't know where legally we can, because the A&R lot is what it is. I mean, they could divide it into that. So I don't know where we could stand on that. But if there was like some bylaw where there was consecutive lots, if there was some way that we could, I don't know what we could do legally.
Since
but-
we're talking about state level, MGL level regulation, of course, basic federalism, a local bylaw or local regulation cannot supersede a state level statute. But Bob's pointing out something very accurately, that if this were to be a subdivision at onset, this would be a much less deleterious project to have built. But because it was done quite literally piecemeal, you're going to have much more damage to not only the scenic nature and the bucolic nature of Bolton, but also on the amount of trees that are taken and culled that under a subdivision development might not likely have ever happened.
So, I mean, should we have suggested to them to go the subdivision route? Could we have given them an incentive to do subdivision versus the way they're doing it?
It probably would have been way more expensive for them to do as a subdivision.
Probably.
Like they'd have to follow so many.
That's the best incentive. If they went with the subdivision route, that would have been far more cost effective than having each single battle fought individually.
Well, no, but Mike is saying to build like a public road, you think it would be more expensive, right?
Well, what I'm saying, I mean,
Yeah.
one person has to handle the whole subdivision. Now they're just selling off lots, and each individual lot owner has to deal with all of the stuff themselves.
Outsourcing the process
And
effectively.
the person who originally owned all that property, they don't want to deal with it. They just want to parcel it off and sell it out.
Right.
So, I mean, the question is, what can the town do? And I don't know. Like I said this in a previous meeting, like landowners have a lot of rights under the law.
Yeah.
And I don't know how we would prevent someone from doing that.
Exactly. If there were a simple, elegant solution, someone far smarter and far more experienced in planning than I would have found it and then told all of us. And I haven't found that yet. So, I mean, I'll keep my ear to the ground and keep an eye out and see what if anything can be found in terms of local regulation or process improvement can be done. But honestly, I'm leaning towards there isn't anything immediately apparent.
I'm not giving up. I will not give up on this one.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
No, I mean, there's got to be a middle ground somewhere.
Yeah.
Collaborative development of A&Rs.
Yeah.
There's something out there.
I've been like from the first time they divided it out. I just saw the dominoes fall and I was like, oh, this is going to be a disaster.
Yeah, and yes,
you can read the tea leaves. It's not hard.
And I think we're quickly and inadvertently turning Bolton into Leavenworth, New Jersey. Each one is its own little parcel. Each one has its own facilities, its own amenities, its own driveway, et cetera, et cetera.
Ticky-tacky.
And it really is. It's going to get tougher and tougher as, quote, undevelopable land gets developed. And this is going to be the implication. Unless we come up with some middle ground. And I would agree with Michael. A subdivision isn't the answer. It's very onerous when it comes to the regulations and meeting all of those requirements. But you need to put on our thinking caps.
I mean, can we
And-
incentivize common driveways somehow? I don't
Yeah.
know.
and,
Yeah.
That there's,
and I've been pushing for years to get Randall Arendt, the UMass landscape guy, who has been working with Harvard Mass, Harvard University, to develop by right approaches to rural by design, meaning you have the same density of people, but you do it in a different way. And preserve the landscape while meeting the requirements for developers.
there's an excellent book on that, Rural by Design by
Yeah, it's
Peter
sitting in
Stokes.
the outback by town hall. If anybody'd like to go read it. But I came away from the meetings that I attended in Harvard with developers in a charrette approach to land development, and came away thinking, well, it's going to be very hard to formulate this in a statutory approach, but at the same time, it probably is worth it. And they've made progress. I think it'd be worth finding out how they're doing. The big argument that they had, that the developers had, which I can understand, is the difference between development using special permits and by right development. And to write a by right development approach that does not make it a subdivision, but meets the objectives of maintaining a rural character is not a simple process, but it's been done. So I think getting ahead of it, it would behoove us, not just for the town, but for ourselves, because it's only going to get worse as we look at quote undevelopable land, which is going to get developed. And with those, one of the houses up there is being advertised for 1.3 million right now, and that's going to be Bolton's norm.
And there's a westerly development push that's coming from Metro West effectively, and that happens, and you can feel it all the way across most transportation vectors, like Route 9, for example. I remember a time when I was younger when Westboro was not a baby Framingham, and there was a time that Framingham was not a baby, and you can keep going easterly. That development push is going to keep moving westerly, and we're in its line of sight. And it's only a
But
matter
if
of
you
time.
react, you lose.
Exactly.
If you
This must be
plan, you'll at least make a dent. You're not
Exactly.
going to win.
Exactly, and you can't slam the door on development. I liken it to, you can't ride the wave, but if you don't ride the wave, you'll be crushed underneath it. So you need to find a way to navigate change and manage change in a way that keeps priorities intact and keeps Bolton, while
Yeah,
still.
but how do you explain what happened at the end of Sugar Road with that 40B?
Well, 40B, that's a state level
Maybe.
statute. We really don't have any.
I know that's what it is.
Yeah, but with all due
you-
respect, and I agree with you, Jim, but for the time being, we have a breather.
Well, we think we do.
We do.
We do, yeah.
So we're just going to have
It's
to
been
manage.
registered now, that we're well over, what, a 13% now,
Yeah.
Todd?
Yeah, we're well over our required 10% SHI.
But don't relax.
No. This requires a continuous application of effort rather than trying to solve the problem in a few monolithic developments. It's
We're
much
over-
better. It's
I'm-
much
I'm-
better to weave it in and pepper in SHI units and make it kind of as invisible as possible, because they're woven throughout the neighborhood fabric, as
I'm
opposed
sorry.
to having a there, and there kind of approach.
I'm sorry, Todd, to interrupt.
Oh, it's okay.
When did we go over our 10%?
With the units for
580 Main.
580 Main, that there, you got to keep
The
in mind.
apartment complex.
Yes, the entire apartment complex there,
It's
all of those units
affordable.
count. Exactly. All of those units count
Oh.
towards the SHI inventory, even though only a small percentage are literally SHI themselves. We get
not know
credit
that.
from the HDD for the whole thing, which
But-
which got us the numbers.
The
Awesome.
irony of that is that we still have a huge issue throughout Bolton of affordable, lowercase a,
Yeah.
not 40B criteria housing. So, we've got a breather, but we've got a problem too.
Oh yeah, and that's,
Problem in
I mean,
terms of
and
town character
Mass-
and
Yeah, Massachusetts is second in the United States, if my most recent numbers are correct, second or third in the United States for the most affordable housing, as price per square foot.
I
And that's-
apologize for my ignorance on that one. I didn't realize that put us over the 10%. That's great.
Yeah, I mean,
Relax.
so.
Yeah, we can't rest on our laurels, but that means we can kind of ease off and then just kind of pepper in units as development increases.
So-
just make sure that we include that 10% or even 15% to not just have us tread water, but actually have us make further progress and buy us more time.
We're
Is that
just lucky
10%?
that we're not at the end of the MBTA.
Oh yeah, and transit orient development projects there and gateway city projects are the next wave. I could talk housing until all of us are clearly asleep, but I'll
All right.
still be talking.
Too late. We're already asleep.
Well, you got me started, man. What do you want? Either
All
way,
right.
Yeah.
Can we
Do you have
end
anything
this?
else?
Yeah.
that's the
Over.
summation of my planner's report. Sorry to talk here.
Let's end the pain,
I
please.
will take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Well, with everyone fighting to adjourn, let's just begin roll call. I'll begin with Pete,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
James,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
and Michael.
Aye.
And with that, my good sirs, meeting adjourned.
Nice job tonight, Pete.